Some good news for Oregon football on the recruiting trail. Dan Lanning just landed another massive recruit in the 2024 class, and we're going to be breaking it down on today's episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. And we're back like we never left. Oregon fans, what's going on? How we living? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Just in case you're new here, I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks over on Fan Nation, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to tune into another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Whether you're listening on podcast or watching on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres, excited to have you guys along for another episode of the pod. Before we get into today's episode, do me a favor, hit those like and subscribe buttons to support the channel and hit that notification bell to make sure you don't miss out on future episodes of the podcast or future YouTube videos talking Oregon football and Oregon football recruiting. So, big breaking news today. Friday, July 7th, Dylan Williams, 2024 Long Beach Poly linebacker, has announced his commitment to the Oregon Ducks. A huge recruiting win for Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoi, and the rest of this Oregon coaching staff. And let's be honest, Oregon was in really desperate need, maybe not desperate, but Oregon needed some good news on Friday after missing out on South Point Catholic five-star edge rusher Elijah Rushing, who committed to Jed Fish in the Arizona Wildcats. And Dylan Williams has been one of Oregon's priority targets here in the 2024 class, for a really long time. He decommitted from USC back in the fall, and I really thought that Oregon led since that decommitment. Once he opened things back up, I believe he opened things up on the heels of a visit to Oregon, if memory serves. So that's kind of how things have, for the most part, worked in my experience covering Oregon on the recruiting trail. If a guy's committed somewhere else and then he decommits after a visit to Oregon, Oregon's usually in the lead. Look at Johnny Bowens in the 2023 class. That is a perfect example. Texas A&M commit, visits Oregon in the spring, opens things back up, ends up in Eugene. So that's just one example. But what we're going to be doing on today's episode, we're going to be breaking this commitment down, talking about what it means for Oregon, going to get in a little bit of a film breakdown for Dylan Williams, the newest Oregon Duck commit in the 2024 class, and then talk about what's next, because recruiting never stops, and we are in the thick of commitment season with a couple of big targets also set to announce their commitments in the coming days and weeks as July rolls on. We're in a dead period. Recruits can't take visits, but they are making their commitments, and there is news all over the place. So Dylan Williams chooses Oregon, and he did so from a top five that consisted of Oregon, Michigan State, Washington, UCLA, and Miami. So Oregon had to go against some pretty big name programs to get this one done. And honestly, Michigan State made a huge push in this recruitment, They were one of a number of schools that got official visits from the Long Beach Poly linebacker. Dylan Williams took official visits out to UCLA, Michigan State, Oregon, and I want to say Washington as well. I think that there were reports that he was going to visit Miami, Texas, and Michigan, but I don't believe those trips materialized. I'll have to double check social media to see, but I know he visited Oregon. I know he visited Michigan State. I know he visited UCLA for sure. And really, it was Oregon. I was hearing a lot of UCLA buzz in the past week or so. And then, on Thursday, I woke up to, and a lot of Oregon fans woke up to crystal ball predictions from a couple of Michigan State insiders over on Spartan Tailgate, the 247 Sports Michigan State site. So that kind of just legitimizes to a degree that Michigan State's making a really strong push. And, I was making some calls, talking to sources close to the recruitment on Thursday, and Michigan State was a real threat. And this is just a big win for Oregon to hang, maybe not hang on because he wasn't committed, but Oregon has long been viewed as the front runner for Dylan Williams, and to have UCLA make their push, to have Michigan State make their push, and Oregon still ended up winning out in this recruitment is a tremendous recruiting win for Dan Lanning and this staff. If we can talk about a couple of different things. Let's talk about the SoCal pipeline. I'm out here in Southern California. I've gotten to see Dylan Williams quite a few times, see him, cover him in person. Awesome kid, well-spoken guy, got a great head on his shoulders. He took this recruiting process relatively slowly. I talked to him last at the Long Beach Poly Showcase in May, and he was saying, I'm taking this process slowly. I'm not closing my options off at all, and I'm going to make this commitment when it feels right. But he said that, Oregon, I love everything about Oregon. Everything is great up there. Oregon might be a top 3 school, might be the top school. That was back in May, like I mentioned, but that just goes to show you that Oregon had really been surging in this recruitment. So the Southern California pipeline gets another duck in the fold with Dylan Williams joining guys like Dylan Gresham, the San Jacinto wide receiver commit for Oregon, Jack Ressler, the modern day wide receiver commit here in Oregon's 2024 recruiting class. So he's a big addition, and you want to keep. And then Jordan Anderson from Newport Harbor, another wide receiver that's committed to Junior Adams and the Ducks here in the 2024 class, as the Ducks continue to go to Southern California, one of the talent hotbed on the West Coast, and get top guys. What else can we talk about? I mean, this is a huge get for the Ducks because Long Beach Poly is one of the best programs in the country, certainly one of the best in Southern California. They signed cornerback Dalen Austin out of Long Beach Poly in the 23 class, so I bet that was part of the appeal for Dylan Williams, teaming up with Dalen Austin again in college at the next level. And Dylan Williams is really that kind of linebacker that Dan Lanning really wanted to add in this 2024 recruiting class. One of those guys that can help take you to the next level, take your defense to the next level, and definitely continue establishing Oregon as a recruiting power in the Pac-12, as a recruiting power nationally. A little rundown on Dylan Williams, if you don't already know, I'm looking at his 247 profile, listed at 6'2.5", 210 pounds, rated a 4-star prospect, 0.9297 on the 247 Sports Composite, number 181 player nationally, number 17 linebacker, and the number 17 prospect in California. And, this was a guy who got a lot of big offers during his recruitment, 31 reported scholarship offers throughout his high school career. And, he's going into his senior season. So maybe more schools will come in, but really the timeline with Dylan Williams, he decommitted from USC. Like I said, Oregon was really thought to be the leader. And then I think it was around January or February, just everybody was coming in. Michigan State was coming in. Alabama was coming in. Miami was coming in. More SEC programs. Texas. I remember I was talking to him, as all this was happening, and he wasn't necessarily surprised, but I think that was part of the reason that he waited as long as he did to ultimately hop in the fold. And I'm sure the staff had something to do with the timing of all of it, because like I mentioned, you miss on Elijah Rushing, but you have Dylan Williams announced on Friday, and that's definitely some very positive recruiting momentum in the 2024 class. Oregon's 2024 class now moves to number 7 nationally, according to the 247 Sports rankings. Popping in the class calculator, they take a little bit to update, but passing Penn State, moving from 8 to number 7. Still chasing USC, the top class in the Pac-12 right now. But, you're heading in the right direction, and that's all you can really ask for. USC currently has the number 5 class in the country at 17 commits, and Oregon has 19 commits in this 2024 class. So they are doing very well for themselves. And Dylan Williams checks a major box, fills a major position of need. Oregon only signed one high school linebacker in the 2023 recruiting class, in Jerry Mixon out of Sacred Heart Cathedral in San Francisco, California. So you add him, and then you also go to the portal to get Justin Jacobs. He's probably only going to be there a year. Connor Soley, also in the portal from Arizona State. So you needed to add linebackers after only signing one high school guy in the last cycle. And Dylan Williams is super impressive on tape. So let's use that to segue into a little bit of film breakdown of Oregon's newest commit. All right, if you're on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres, you're watching the film breakdown here for Dylan Williams, 2024 Oregon linebacker commit. Dylan Williams was dominant all last year. You know, he just every week he always shows up and makes big plays. I think, you know, one of the things that stands out the most to me about Dylan Williams on tape is his athleticism and his explosiveness. You want those guys that are not only going to deliver the big hits, but they're going to, you know, take on that contact and explode through that contact. And you see Dylan Williams doing that, whether he's utilizing his skill set in the pass rush, whether he's making a play in the backfield as a disruptor in the run game. I just feel like he is a very well-rounded linebacker that is going to be able to do a lot of different things for Oregon. Inside linebacker depth has not been strong for a little while now at Oregon. I mean, Noah Sewell was a good linebacker, but, you know, he did take a step back in the 2022 season. And I think that his lack of consistent pass coverage definitely was the main knock on him. So the bar was set high for Oregon when it comes to recruiting linebackers. You know, Justin Flo is at Arizona now, and he didn't pan out. But, you know, those are two of the highest rated linebackers that Oregon's ever gotten. So you know that Dan Lanning only wants to exceed that standard and keep bringing in game-changing talent. And I think that's definitely what Dylan Williams is. He has a really good feel for the game. You see over and over again on tape, he's in the right place at the right time. He's got that high football IQ. He's coming from a program, one of the most prestigious programs in high school football history. I think that I saw something that said Long Beach Poly has the most NFL players of any high school in the country. Maybe that story is a little bit old, but, you know, Deshaun Jackson came from Long Beach Poly. That's the most notable guy that I'm aware of. And then you see the closing speed by Dylan Williams, just, you know, the athleticism and the agility and the mobility. You know, it's just so many strengths and so many positive traits to his game. And, you know, I'll admit that I'm trying to get better at, you know, evals, and here you see him in pass coverage with a great play in the end zone, breaking up that pass. But I am trying to find more, you know, weaknesses on guys, but, you know, you see him making the play there, batting down a pass. I was talking earlier about his agility and just his ability. You know, some of the people that I've talked to about Dylan Williams are just talking about his ability to play sideline to sideline. You know, that is so important, not only in today's college football, but just in terms of filling a need for Oregon. You know, like I was saying last season, Oregon's pass coverage by their linebackers was a major liability. And Dan Lanning with this addition, Tosh Lupoi with this addition, they're showing that they don't want that is a very clear need that they are addressing with Dylan Williams. So he's a guy that doesn't necessarily have just one thing that he does really well, but does a couple of different things really well. And I think that there's that discussion, you know, do you want a guy who does one thing really well, or who does a couple of different things pretty good? But this is an elite addition for Dan Lanning. And, you know, I talked about coming from Poly, him being very well coached as a linebacker. I think that he's probably going to be a guy that can see the field sooner than later once he gets to Oregon. You know, I'm not saying he's going to be a freshman starter, but I would not be surprised, not only because of the lack of depth at inside linebacker, but just because of his potential, the skill set that he has, the production that he's had at the high school level. I would not be surprised if he is heavily in the mix, you know, rotation guy that you see every week at Oregon. So Dylan Williams is a tremendous add for Dan Lanning and Oregon here in the 2024 class. It was a guy that you kind of thought they were going to land at some point. And, you know, here we are in early July, and Dylan Williams is hopping in the fold. I mean, I can pretty much say that it's going to be a guy that they are going to have to battle to hang on to. You could probably say that for a number of commits in this Oregon class. Looking at Jaquan McRoy, the offensive tackle out of Alabama, people aren't going to stop recruiting that guy just because he committed to Oregon. And, in the weeks leading up to Dylan Williams' decision to commit to Oregon, there was some chatter that he was going to take a visit out to USC later this summer. And that Lincoln Riley and his staff would love nothing more than to, flip him now that he's committed to Oregon and, get one of their top commits back in the fold. They are absolutely popping off in this 2024 class. And we're going to continue to see these Lanning versus Riley recruiting battles for years to come. So what else can we say about Dylan Williams? I mean, we talked about the SoCal pipeline. I think it's just another example of how this Oregon staff is making pipelines into some of the best programs in the country. They've definitely made a pipeline into St. John Bosco. I'm not sure they're going to land anybody from Bosco in the 24 class after signing Mateo Uyunglele in the 2023 class. I kind of thought for a while they were going to stay involved with Peyton Woodyard, but I don't really know. I mean, right now he's committed to Georgia. And if I were to predict him to go to any other school, I think it would be USC. But there's a lot of time between now and December. So if I had to pick a guy from St. John Bosco that Oregon would stay involved with, it would definitely be Peyton Woodyard, 2024 Georgia safety commit. He is a dude for sure. So you got Bosco, and then you got modern day. You got Jack Ressler in the fold in the 2024 class. You got Lipe Moala in the 2023 class. Oregon's also recruiting Brandon Baker and Nate Frazier and Aiden Breland. All of those guys, super, super high priority targets in the 24 class. Aiden Breland's a number one player according to 247 Sports in California, number 2 defensive lineman. Nate Frazier is one of the top backs in the country, probably the top back on the West Coast. Oregon's in a very heavy, very intense battle with Georgia right now. Alabama's also in the mix with Nate Frazier. And then Brandon Baker, it's, looking like Oregon is still in the lead. I think they're the team that leads, but Texas is staying heavily involved with Brandon Baker as he kind of makes his way through the recruiting process. So those are some very impressive schools that you want to be making your pipelines to, at least if you're just looking at, my neck of the woods here in Southern California. But those are the schools that you want to be making pipelines to. Make no mistake about it. Now we got to look at what's next, because now that Dylan Williams is in the fold, I think that, he's kind of a crucial piece to maybe what's coming next for Oregon. Right now we are we're turning our attention to Kamar Matudi, the 2024 Los Alamitos linebacker. Is set to make his decision. Now it looks like the updated date is July 11th, and he's looking at schools like Oregon, Michigan State, and Washington, and Utah, and Texas. So Oregon is still very much in the mix with Kamar Matudi, and the reason that I think this Dylan Williams commitment is important is because Dylan Williams and Kamar Matudi are good friends. They play 7-on-7 ball together with Premium Sports. So I think that the possibility or the idea of teaming up at the college level definitely carries some weight for Kamar Matudi. I felt very good about my pick for Oregon when I made it back in March, but it looks like Michigan State is also making a very strong push for Kamar Matudi. They got an official visit from him. Washington also got an official visit, I believe. Utah got an official visit. So I still think that that Oregon's going to be the team to beat for Kamar Matudi, and I'm feeling good about that, especially now that Dylan Williams is in the fold. I kind of feel like they're going to be a package deal. I don't know if neither of them have said that, but just talking about how they're friends, previous connections, what have you, I think that it's looking like Dylan Williams' commitment to Oregon could only aid Kamar Matudi, Oregon's chances with Kamar Matudi, I should say. So that is going to be a development that you have to watch. And then now looking forward at the linebacker picture, Justin Williams is still a big name on the board for Oregon. Ducks are in a very tight battle with Georgia for Justin Williams, the 5-star linebacker out of Conroe, Texas, Oak Ridge High School. His teammate, another Oregon target, Joseph Jonah Ajonye, big-time defensive lineman out of Oak Ridge. He just announced his commitment to Georgia on Thursday night, so that's going to be a feather in Georgia's cap, trying to get those guys to team up again in Athens. But Justin Williams is definitely the next name that you have to watch at linebacker for Oregon here in the 2024 class. He doesn't have a commitment date right now, but it looks like all the signs are pointing to Georgia-Oregon battle. Then you also have Braden Platt out of Yelm, Washington. He's been a big name that Oregon's been recruiting heavily in this 2024 class. He's eyeing a commitment on September 4th, I believe. So Oregon is Oregon. Those are kind of the names that you have to know when you're looking at the linebacker picture for the Ducks here in the 2024 recruiting class. Pick up just a second. Let's see what else we have here. Preston Tamua, the offensive lineman out of Hawaii, is another big name that we're going to continue to track. He's announcing his college commitment on July 16th, and he just recently got crystal balled from Oregon to Nebraska. Now Blair Angulo of 247 switching one of his previous picks for Oregon. Now moving that to Nebraska. It's Oregon, Nebraska, Alabama, Auburn, and Arizona, I believe, are his top 5. So the Ducks are going to continue pushing for Preston Tamua. Definitely would be interesting if they do miss out on him, seeing that Alik Terry, coached at Hawaii and has good connections in that state, assuming they have a really good relationship. But that's kind of the latest that we're tracking right now for Oregon. Huge commitment coming on Friday for Oregon, picking up 2024 Long Beach Poly linebacker Dylan Williams. He's going to be a Duck. He's going to play his college football in Eugene. So that is a huge addition for Dan Lanning, a statement on the recruiting trail here in 2024. Just a note to wind down the pod here. I'm going to be heading out of the country, so I'm going to try my best to keep you guys updated with recruiting and news and everything, but also want to enjoy the vacation. So hard to find the right time to take a vacation in this industry. But yeah, you guys got to make sure you tap in with me. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at mtorresports and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Oregon Football Max Torres. Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.